what I'm going to talk about is yes, a career that led to a career in gaming. It is also about the journey that got us there, and the name of my presentation is "We Are All Hobbits." So what does that mean? What does that mean? That means we're all very comfortable where we are, but at some point, you have to get out into the world, right? And learn and succeed or fail. So let's do a little bit of a poll. I want to know, first of all, who here plays games? Very good. Very good. Very good. Who here has used Photoshop to edit an image? Okay, very good. Almost everyone. Who in the crowd has made a web page? Okay, so what's that? That's about over half, just over half. Web page, Facebook doesn't count as a web page. I mean an original web page with some art. That's about over half. Who here has ever programmed something using JavaScript? Yeah, JavaScript? What languages? What language did you use to program? C++, that's awesome. Perfect. Okay, so let's get rolling. I'm going to tell the story. I was asked to tell the story of my life and how I got here, so let's do that. So in high school, St. Paul's High School was 2 blocks away from me, and I was in the first computer science class at St. Paul's. And Mr. Matthews, yeah, we had no computers. Can you imagine? Mr. Matthews had 2 weeks while we waited for the computers to show up, and he showed us 2001, a movie 2001, A Space Odyssey, and I think that actually planted a seed in my brain that manifested later. The other thing about my computer science class, I took computer science in grade 11 and grade 12 at St. Paul's High School, was that Mr. Matthews had a final examination and a final project, but if you wanted to, you could do your own final project. Just define your own programming project, and you can guess what I did. I did a game. I also did a music project. I was the only one in the class of 22 people that dared to do his own project. He reminded me that I was still responsible for the material at the end of the year on the final examination. Going to St. Paul's wasn't actually an easy thing to do because I had to, you'll see a theme here, I had to study for about 3 months for the entrance examination. There was a lot of mathematics on it. In grade 9, I actually studied for the mathematics competition, wrote the mathematics competition in Manitoba, and then went to St. Paul's. So fortunately, I was there at the right time, and I was able to participate and be able to use computers. That's amazing. It's like ancient history, right? So what did I do at university? At university, I studied everything I could study. I literally studied probably 40 or 50 different courses, and I was accepted into honors physics in university because, well, I guess I did well in physics, and they asked me to study honors physics, and I thought it would be a good idea. But what really interested me was theater. I studied Shakespeare, I studied Chaucer, I studied Greek myth, I studied literature, I studied Canadian literature. I just loved reading. And that's a theme, read. Reading is good, right? Everybody tells you to read, but read things that you love. I also read a lot of science fiction, but I also read everything else. So after I did that, I actually started a theater company in Winnipeg called the Winnipeg Shakespeare Company, and directed and made 2 plays. So what's the point of me talking about this? The point of me talking about this is that if you have a dream, if you have something that you want to do, that it's a good thing to just go ahead and try it and fall on your face. All of you here, if you never fell on your face, literally, when you were trying to walk, you wouldn't be able to walk, right? If you don't fail at doing something, you'll never learn how to succeed at it. And possibly when you do something like create a theater company and direct a play, or how many here have ever recorded a musical song? Be honest. How many hands? Okay. So, you know, you shouldn't be afraid. I was just down in Chicago for the digital media learning competition. And you know what? It's you guys. It's you guys and you girls, you gentlemen and you ladies. You're the ones who are pushing the envelope. Do you realize that? You know how to use all the technology about 5 times better than any adult who's 8 years older than you. Do you all know that? Yeah. So you can do anything. Right? The sooner you start trying things that you've never done before, the more effective you'll be at finding and accomplishing the things you want to do in life, such as being working in the video game field, if that's what you decide to do. So just go out and do it. Down in Chicago, I was watching the outgoing class, you know, for an inner school city. The outgoing class 4 years ago. This is interesting. They had the first meeting 4 years ago. They were all in grade 9. And then the last meeting 4 years later that I was at, as I was working on a project with Mozilla, the Firefox people, and introducing it there. And those students who had started doing projects in high school were able to present themselves to the universities of their choice and the employers of their choice. And we're all going on to university. Now, we're very lucky in Winnipeg. Most of you, probably all of you here, can go to university in the United States. It's very difficult to get into good schools. So, you know, take advantage of the fact that you live here in Manitoba, and do try to be high achieving. I'll talk a little bit more about Winnipeg. So the point is, in your 20s, create something, make something new, whether it's a song, a theater company, your own company. Carry business cards around, impress people, and learn everything you need to learn, okay? Is it a deal? You're all going to do that? You're going to try. What does Yoda say about trying? Do not try, do. Do. So remember the computers? I was studying the computers the whole time along. Now look at this ancient history. This is 1996, so guess what? In 1996, I looked exactly like everybody in the crowd here. I had studied some Shakespeare and some theater, but I had been practicing creating images and web pages on my own. And I read an author called Tony Robbins. He's the guy with huge teeth who talks about personal growth. So personal growth books are good to do. I had a plan. Now, this was about April the 2nd in 1996. And I knew that Manitoba Telecom was going to be at a conference here on April the 16th in this very convention center. And what I did was I developed a 20-step plan. Here's why you should hire me. Okay? And I said, because I can create images, you have 20,000 clients in the yellow pages, I can make web pages for all of them, I can help you with your customers, I can design and develop your yellow pages. And I went to the convention, presented my idea. They were very impressed by my attitude and invited me for an interview. I went down for an interview at Manitoba Telecom. I phoned them every week, did volunteer work during the summer, and on August 18th, 1996, Manitoba Telecom hired me as their web designer. That sounds like no big deal, but you know what? I was the first web designer working full-time in Winnipeg. That's how long ago it was. In about 1997, I started the website development certification program at Red River College, and that program is still being taught today. I think there's something like 20,000 graduates for adults that learn web design through that program. They asked me to chair it, but that's because I went to them and said, hey, I know how to create web pages. Do you have any courses for that? No, they had no courses for it. Why don't you design our program? So that's fun. So this is something to go and be a web designer. I told my dad I was going to go be a web designer. He didn't know what that was, right? And neither did anybody else. But I knew what that was. Inside each of you, you know or have an inkling of an idea about what you want to be when you quote-unquote grow up. And guess what? You're mostly grown up now. When you quote-unquote grow up, you need to nourish that idea inside of you. You need to continuously do things like practice your C programming and challenge yourselves. That's how you grow. You challenge yourself. So, find the thing that you love. right? And focus on success in that area. Now, here's the thing. You will be, see, some of you love each other. That's very nice. I see hugging over there. You will find more than one thing in your life that you love to do, but when you find something that really motivates you and you really love, whether it's track and field, or running, swimming, reading, loving movies, take one of those things and decide, you know, is there a career here for me? Is there something I can do to create? Remember that thing I talked about creation. Create your own work. Be a creative person. You know, when they tell you when you're a kid that everybody is born in this world for a reason, it's really true, right? What happens is you don't believe it. Believe it. Everyone here is born for a reason. You have something to contribute to the world. The universe tells you that you have something to contribute. Follow your dreams, okay? But focus. You know, I have friends who I went to university with and switch too much, and I'm going to be critical, switch too much from one thing to the next thing to the next thing. It's hard to reach a goal if your path goes back and forth too much. If you set a goal, a 20-step goal, such as becoming a web designer at MTS, follow the 20 steps, go all the way, try to succeed at the one goal, and then move on to the next thing. This is the quote-unquote wisdom that I'm supposed to give you today, that will help you with success. You got a lot more than you bargained for today, didn't you, coming to this lecture? But we're getting to the video games, I promise. So this is the point. If you follow what is your love, the world and people that you meet will recognize that in you. Did you know there's 2 things that I did to get every job, and I've had like 4 of them only in my life. And one of them is when you go in for a job interview situation, if you want to be a game developer, you go in for a job interview situation, make sure you listen to the people that are talking to you, that are interviewing you. Did you know that in any kind of job you go for, that the single, and this is in 1996, these are papers that my father gave me, that he studied and said, Khal, read these statistics about interviews. The only binding statistic for every kind of interview, whether you get a job or you don't get a job, is how well you listen. And what listening means, very specifically, is you let the person interviewing you talk, you listen to what they're saying, you model their body language, you try and get into their head. See, I'm doing that with you right now. Try and get into their head, and they are conveying their dream to you. And they'll pause, and when they pause, ask a question. All right? So let me ask you a question. Do you want to be a video game designer? Is that why you're here? You do. Excellent. So that's one trick. There's tricks. The 20-step plan is a trick. The listening in an interview is the trick. The other trick is be as enthusiastic as you possibly can without breaking something. Me at that booth at MTS in 1996 was, oh, I can so be the best web designer. I know exactly what's going on. Then they start talking, and then you do what? You listen. They say, oh, we've wanted an MTS directory for quite some time, but we never met anybody who had this skill set. Can you do that for us? I believe that I can. I do have to study the problem more, but I think, what kind of things did you want in that website? Get them to talk. So this is all applicable to finding a career in gaming, as you'll see, because that's what I ended up doing. So in 2000, I left MTS, and it wasn't good enough for me to do websites in Manitoba. I kind of wanted to have the best web design job in the country. So I went to cbc.ca. I planned this out. I met people at CBC. I talked to them. I did work for them. And I made a move. And I moved to Toronto. And all the web pages you saw from 2000 to 2005 on cbc.ca, because it was the #1 site in the country, I touched, I programmed them, I developed them, I worked on Hockey Night in Canada, I did all this fun stuff. I remember I was working on Hockey Night in Canada, and I phoned my computer science teacher back at St. Paul's High School. And I said, Mr. Matthews, is that you? You'll never guess what I'm doing. Because of you, because of your awesome computer science class, I'm like working at CBC, and because you had me writing programs for the St. Paul's Crusaders, I'm writing programs for the NHL. And he said, thank you, Khal, but I'm sure it's all you. That's a great conversation a few years later to be able to have with your teacher. Thanks for contributing so much. to my life, right? That's a great conversation. So, moving on. But here's the thing. By 2005, after working on the news for 5 years, I was becoming extremely frustrated. All of you here are of the age to know what kind of news was going on from 2000 to 2005. You know, the Iraq War, the Afghanistan War. I felt that the narrative or the story that was being shown on the news was being shown because people weren't smart enough. This is the cynical view that I had, and I actually started hating working on the news. I hated it. I did not like it. I did not want to be part of showing people the same old things and showing them car crashes and showing them wars in other places and not actually reporting on what was going on. I became quite cynical. I decided what I would like to do is I started studying in around 2003 while I was at CBC. I took more courses at Ryerson University in Java and C and object-oriented programming and learned how to develop video games. I had a program called Unreal. I used the Unreal Editor. And today, the Unreal Editor, for those of you who are curious about making your own game and your own game levels, is called UDK. You can download that for free. And I made a level that showed Jupiter hanging in the sky above Europa, and I was like, you know what? Me designing planets is so much more fun than designing stuff for news. If I design these planets kind of realistically, maybe I could do a job in this. And I decided that I would pack up my bags after being left Winnipeg for a very long time, for 5 years, come back. I came back to Winnipeg. And I took a whole year of study in computer science. That is a whole year. Some of you can do 4. I had already worked in the field for 10 years. Can you imagine that? I went back to school. But I found that the University of Winnipeg Internet Systems Specialist program was excellent. In case the video game thing didn't work out, at the very least, I would be able to continue doing what I did for clients here in Winnipeg and start a business. I opened an office on the University of Manitoba campus soon after that and decided, okay, I'm going to try this game thing. And what I did was I picked up the phone and I phoned the Canadian Space Agency and I said, you know, I'm a really good web developer. I worked at CBC and so on. Have you guys ever thought of doing games for kids, you know, for learning, you know, science games? And like, yes, we've thought of that, Khal, but let me get back to you. So the Canadian Space Agency, I did web development, some more clients for a year. The Canadian Space Agency called me my company's name is Project Whitecard, and they said, Khal, we've decided that we're going to let somebody do this game. Please do write what's called a request for proposal, respond to that for how you would create this game. And we won that proposal. So my company, my game company, came into being around 2007. If you go to the Canadian Space Agency site and download the game, I think it's free. Actually, they'll mail it to your teacher, to your math teacher. We programmed that with astronaut Julie Payette. I spent a week with her in Montreal, actually in Houston, or as she says, Houston, Julie Payette, and did a game which had mathematics and trigonometry in the context of the International Space Station. At around the same time, I also picked up the phone and called NASA and said, NASA, have you ever thought of doing games for kids? Because I don't think people are smart enough, and I would like to use game technology, the best game technology, to do a game about landing on the moon. And NASA said, oh, that sounds like a good idea, Khal. We'll think about that. And a year later, NASA called, and NASA said, we are going to issue out an RFP in the year 2010, and that's 5 years ago. And yes, of course, you're welcome to apply for that. So at that time, I had 2 employees. I went down to the United States. I used all my English language skills. I'd read so much, and I was inspired. Wrote a proposal and competed against 90 other companies, and guess what? The Winnipeg company won, Project Whitecard. So we are building a massively multiplayer online role-playing game now for NASA. And the announcement that is about to come out in the news in the next little while is that the Canadian Media Fund is going to fund our video game here in Winnipeg to get even larger, which is really awesome. So now I'm also supposed to talk about what I do at work. Up to about 3 years ago, I would program use Photoshop, create 3D models using Maya. I would use C, I would use Unreal Script and the Unreal Editor. But up until 3 years ago, I was doing that. It was very hands-on. Lately, a CEO is that kind of guy that you see answering the phone and writing a lot and talking to people. I go and talk to my 3D designers and I say, could you please adjust the color here, change that. I go and talk to the writers and say, I think the character needs a little bit more development. And I go to the sketch artist and I say, I think that character looks pretty good, but could we maybe make her taller or make her shorter? Or could we maybe make that spaceship look a little bit more cool? And we'll be doing that for the next couple of years. So if you're curious more about Project Whitecard, just visit my site. So there I'm back again. Why are we hobbits? I'm back in Winnipeg, and Winnipeg is the place I love most in the world. Having traveled all over, Winnipeg is the place I choose to make my home and make my family. And have my business. I love Winnipeg. I've been and lived in other cities, including Toronto, for 5 years, and I think Winnipeg is the very best city in the whole world. I really do. You do sometimes have to travel away, as I did, to see that that's the case, but when you come back, it's really true. So we're all very fortunate to be in such a great city. For those of you who aren't aware, if you're working with a video game company in the next little while, there's a couple of them that are sprouting up. I think my best friend, one of my friends, Noah Dector Jackson, also has a video game company. He started at the same time as me and has grown to 30 people. It's quite exciting time to be working in that field. So we're all hobbits in our own way. But just remember, everybody here, never ever give up on your dreams. Sometimes a dream can hurt you and it's not the right dream and you have to switch slightly and adjust your dream, but do go through that process and decide early what you want to do. Create something, right? If you're not creating something now, even sketching ideas, do it. Don't let anybody tell you not to sketch ideas. You can imagine, I'm the guy in chemistry class at St. Paul's High School, puts up his hand and says, Mr. Lucier, do you think there's a diamond at the center of Jupiter? And all the kids laugh, right? Well, guess what? I got to ask that question at NASA, and when I went to my high school reunion, I said, hey, Jerry, remember when you laughed because you told me to go ask NASA about the diamond in Jupiter? I went and asked them, and here's what I'm doing. So, I mean, the point is, you're not trying to trump people. The point is, don't let people step on your dreams. That's what you've got going for you, right? If you want to be a video game designer and you have ideas of your own and you have aspirations to work in a company, go for it. So I mentioned a few programs. C, learning object-oriented programming. Do study formally for at least 1 or 2 years before you run off to a company. You need that background. It's very competitive out there. Even if you want to just sketch, you need a fine arts degree if you're going to compete in Toronto or San Francisco. Do some formal education, but also remember, my formal education isn't formal at all. It's all self-taught. I started learning things before they showed up in the school, and as a result, I go and lecture at. You'll see me lecturing in video game design at University of Winnipeg. You'll see me delivering some of their courses. So I should show you the current project that we're working on a little bit. Yeah, pretty cool, right? So how about this? So that's the Minerva rover. So, that's a plan. That's a complete plan of mine that as I develop video games with my little team, there's 10 of us, and we come up with cool vehicles and stuff, that this stuff's going to exist in real life one day because we thought of it. Isn't that an amazing thing? I really think it's true. I mean, this Minerva rover has been out in the public because we had a Kickstarter campaign about 1.5 years ago, and I heard James Cameron talking about, oh, they really should land an SUV on Mars. Yes, they should. The asteroid mission, by the way, an asteroid mission is about to be announced by NASA. Nobody really knows about it. The White House has confirmed it. They're going to capture an asteroid and bring it back to Earth. And what you will see is a tiny little vehicle called an Orbital B. Everything that we design at Project Whitecard here in Winnipeg is equally owned by NASA. You'll see this tiny little vehicle attacking the asteroid, and it's very similar to the tiny vehicle that we designed. That's totally part of what we're doing right now. We're having the time of our lives. I mean, let me just walk around here a little bit. Pretty cool, right? So this is running on the iPad, and we'll be releasing on all platforms. Like I said, I have sketch artists who sketch everything ahead of time, and then we have 3D artists who build it, and people program the functionality. This is in closed beta right now, but it'll be released on the App Store sometime in the next month. We have a Mac, PC, Android, and iOS Apple version coming out. Let me just show you a little bit of coolness. Oh, I think there's some audio too. You can turn the audio up a little if you want. There's no trailer that's been released yet.
Hello, Commander. Well, that Charlie situation is locked down. I simply said, yeah, you could keep doing that. Or if you want to find out where our solar array crashed on Deimos, we could use that instead. He calmed down right after that. Anyway, the next time he grabs a chimera, he'll check the airlock seal. Commander, hold up a second.
So you can kind of see how the steps we took creating a project. Actually, we've done a second project with astronaut Chris Hadfield. He's kind of famous right now. He's commanding the International Space Station. That one just came out in November. It's also a free download. You can kind of see that all the skills that we acquired at Project Whitecard over the last 4 years, as we built from a staff of 2 people up to 12 people, are being used now in our own project. And the Canadian Media Fund is funding us to release this and sell it. We also had funding this year from the MacArthur Foundation, who's a huge educational institution, and also Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Bill Gates, you may remember, started Microsoft, and he's giving all his money away. So he funded part of our project, so I kind of think of that as a good result after swearing at Windows so much. So let me show you what this looks like. It's pretty fun. So when you play this game, what will happen is an astronaut needs to be rescued. You actually end up learning a little bit about physics. How about that, without realizing it? Because our crafting system, which is similar to Minecraft, isn't just made up. Our crafting system actually will teach you things that you could use if any of you ever decide to become a scientist or anybody decides to become an astronaut. And that's actually the stealth plan that's going on. We're trying to use games that don't have guns in them. I started hating guns. I play games like that too, but the purpose of my company is to try to come up with ways to make games as entertaining as games with guns without using guns and without having bodies flying all over the place. Right? Yeah, it's amazing that you have a technology, right? Isn't it amazing that you have a technology like game technology, but all that anybody does with it is pretend to shoot people? You could be designing missions to Mars. What are we doing? Just shooting people in games in different ways. So anyway, that's the reaction of my company, and that's called a niche, and that's what we do.